Hello, TWC class. This is the second video for week 13, and I'm going to describe for you what you need to be working on for your Sunday homework. We are still working on your final projects. By now you should have picked a topic and started looking for some data. I'm going to expect you don't have all of the data you need at this point, but you hopefully have started to see what's available for you. So now we're going to work on planning and thinking about how you're going to create your narrated PowerPoint. So we're going to talk about story today, and that's what the assignment is going to be for Sunday. So I want you to start off our little activity here today, and think about the story of Little Red Riding Hood. And if you can, I'd like you to close your eyes and just imagine the story. Think about the different stages, the plot. What happens first? Then think about the middle of the story. Is there a setup, something that we know or expect is going to happen? And then keep thinking, are there any plot twists? What is the kind of most interesting part of the story? And finally, what's the ending? How does Little Red Riding Hood end? Now, I'm going to guess for most people, even if you just took a few seconds, you could remember the basic plot line of Little Red Riding Hood without much prompting or remembering, which is really interesting because I'm going to also guess that most of you haven't heard that story for a very, very, very long time. There is something about a good story that can help us get engaged, can help us remember it, and really captivates your audience. If you think about Little Red Riding Hood, one of the main ways that we probably have it stored in our memories is through repetition. You were told the story more than once. But things like plot twists, surprises, a really engaging hook, all of those things can actually help make your story memorable. And so that's what we're going to be working on for your final project. We need to find ways that you can structure your story to make sure that it is memorable and interesting and engaging for your audience. So I do want to show you a different version of Little Red Riding Hood, and pay attention to why, as a story, it may not have the same kind of impact as maybe the story you learned as a kid. So this version of Little Red Riding Hood is a little bit different. This is the version of Little Red Riding Hood and the day PowerPoint came to town. You will be creating a narrated PowerPoint, so this is very, very helpful. We all know that the classic story we just talked about, you can pretty easily remember that story. There's a girl who lived in a village. She went in to go visit her grandmother. She took the nice little basket for her grandmother, and her mom reminded her, go straight to grandma's house. We have a setup, right? Go straight to grandma's house. We kind of know something's probably going to go on there. Woods are dangerous. She said, don't worry. But then she forgot her promise, and she picked some flowers, and she kept going. And then she ran into the wolf, who asked her, what are you doing here? And she said that she's on her way to grandmother's house. And that's where we kind of get that little bit of, ooh, what's going to happen? So when PowerPoint comes to this story, it's a little bit different. Many of you have been in a class. If you haven't been in a work meeting, this is very common, where you have the bullet point version of whatever it is that the person who's presenting is trying to say. So this is Little Red Riding Hood in bullet point fashion. Takes back to grandma, woods are dangerous. We've just got the highlights, but not just the highlights. We have a lot of words still. So we've tried to maybe simplify the story by putting bullets in, but realistically, we've actually made it more complicated to read. We've taken out a lot of the good story elements, and there's still a lot of words, so I can't really skim the story. Or you might see this version, which is not only the version we saw before, but in tiny, tiny, tiny font. So we really can't read it. So we need to add some pizzazz to this, right? So if we're going to tell this story, maybe we want to make it a little more interesting. We're going to add a lot of images because more is better. So here is what is not going to happen in your presentations, right? We are not going to have a chart that looks like this. Number one, this is off topic. This is not helping us tell the story. It's just giving information for the sake of giving information. Plus it has a legend and lines. It's really not very beneficial. So we don't want to do that. What can we do? How can we tell our story effectively with good visuals that give data, but also really focus on the narrative story arc? First, you want to get visual and find smart and interesting images. So for most of your PowerPoints, you're going to be using visualizations you create. And those need to be well chosen and smartly and correctly done. They need to be clean, clear, and concise. And they need to be able to be supporting your main point. So again, when you're thinking about your structure, the visuals are the thing that are going to engage your audience. Even without data visualizations, visuals are the things that add emotion to much of our presentations. So if we have an example here, we have one really clear image and a few words. Honestly, for many presentations that I like to create, not for classes, but when I'm doing a bigger presentation, I really like to just use an image and not even use words because images can create emotion. My speaking can actually give the content that I need to give. So images, again, bring the emotion, or in the case of our data visualizations, provide the detail and the visuals to add the specifics that I can't say all of in one time. But realistically, my voice and my narration give the detail that are needed. So again, in PowerPoint, the visual creates the appeal. So yes, we've gotten to the end of this. What I want, I feel like we skipped a slide though. What I want you to be able to, oh, there we go, I did. Here we go. I skipped it. People aren't inspired by bullet points. We don't want to look at a bunch of bullet points in your presentations. Even at the beginning and the end, when you're not using your data visualizations, try to keep it very simple. Keep the words on the slide very minimal, and really focus on putting the detail in your words as much as possible. Visuals that's why we have PowerPoint. That's why we're doing data visualization. So we need to create appeal with those visuals. They're not just there because I'm requiring them. And again, people are moved by stories. They remember stories and they connect to it. So with your data supporting your story, that's amazing, but you need to have a good core of a story to start. There we go, now we're at the end. So the idea that I want you to take from this, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen, is that I want you to be focusing first for your final presentations on the story you want to tell. How do you want to communicate? What do you want to communicate? And then find the data to support that as much as possible. Now, in some cases, depending on your topic, you may need to go out and look through the data first to figure out what you want to say. But I think for most people so far, the topics that I've been seeing, they're very personal topics. They're things that you enjoy or like. So you probably know what point you want to try to make. And the goal then would be to say, okay, what is my story going to be? And how am I going to use data to support that thesis, that story? And then go out and find the data that will help you do that. So for our presentations, we are going to, again, remember, set the context and grab attention from the audience. You're going to explain your thesis statement. What is the goal of your presentation? What is the main point? What is your thesis? Tell them what you're going to tell them. Then you're going to use your data to support that thesis. You're going to have at least 3 visuals. One of those 3 is going to be the walkthrough that I'm going to teach you how to do. And then at the end, you're going to have a summary and a call to action. What do you want your audience to do with that information? And so that's going to be the structure of your presentation in terms of the slides. But that's not necessarily your narrative story arc. So the assignment this week, and I'm going to show it to you, is really to help you start thinking about how you're going to create your story. It's on Canvas under modules. So again, you'll find the narrated PowerPoint story map assignment. And from there, you're going to click on the link. Please copy the document and save it on your own. It is a Google Doc. You should have view access, so that should allow you to copy, make a copy of your own story map, and then save that. Once you're done with that, you're going to see the story plan worksheet. I call that a couple of different things, but it's the same thing. You'll see the story plan worksheet, and it's going to ask you again for your topic. That just helps me, so I don't have to go back and look it up. And then it asks for your thesis statement. So I didn't ask for this for your Wednesday assignment, but please tell me, what do you think your main point is going to be? Obviously, this can change over time, but what do you think at this point your thesis statement is going to be? What things are you going to try to prove? I made that a little too big. Okay. So what's your thesis statement? Then again, what data you're planning to use. So you already submitted a few websites. Now I definitely would like you to make sure you have a data set. So now please make sure you have a data set. If you are going to conduct a survey, I want to know what kind of questions you're going to ask. I want to see more of the research that you're going to use, particularly more that might support your thesis statement. It doesn't have to be all of your research. I think most people are not going to be done with their research yet, but I would like to see the majority of your research, or at least that you have the ability to find the information. Some topics I'm not as familiar with, so I want to know you have information available. Then you're going to use the storyboards to plan out each section of your presentation. And it doesn't have to be exact, only as much as you know, but I really want you to start thinking about what is that attention-grabbing opening you'd like to give? Is it a story? Are you going to ask a question? Are you going to give the audience a sense of what's coming up? Are you going to give a personal story? So in one box, you're going to describe or draw what the slide might look like. So you might write, I'm going to have a picture of me in my hometown, if I'm going to do a story about my hometown. So my first slide is going to be a photo of me in my hometown, and then I'm going to describe what I might say. So I'm going to say, I'm going to tell a story about my life in my hometown, or I'm going to tell a story about how I came to love whatever it is maybe you're talking about. Maybe how I came to love knitting, if that's the topic. So that's just be a brief description. Is it going to be a personal story? Is it going to be a story, a historical story? Or is it going to be a question that you're going to ask? What is that going to be? And then you're going to move on to what is your point? So what is your thesis statement going to be? So again, draw what is going to be on the slide. Are you going to show an image? Are you going to have you know, your main points listed? Are you going, what is that going to kind of look like? And then again, what kinds of things might you say about your thesis? Why is it important to you? What is the relevance of it? What are you going to talk about regarding your thesis? Then your supporting argument. So you're going to have your main supporting information. So again, I've asked for three visualizations. So if you could come up with like 3 supporting points at this point, that would be really helpful. You may not get to be able to say on this first one, I'm going to do a pie chart with this data, but if you have that information, great, you can include it. But generally, I want to know, what are your 3 supporting points going to be, your supporting arguments? And then what are you going to talk about related to those? So what is it going to look like? What are you going to talk about? And then finally, what is going to be your summary, your call to action, connecting all the dots between your story, the thesis, kind of wrapping it all up in a nice little package at the end. So again, what is that slide going to look like, and what are you going to talk about? And then finally, I want you to read through your story and think about, if you're taking your audience on a journey, do you see that story arc? Down here is a really good example of a story arc. You have a hook, the meat of the presentation to help people understand, and then the payoff, helping them get them to remember or to take action. So read back through your story and kind of answer these questions. Are you taking out your audience on a journey? And then write or draw that below. So my journey is my personal story, and then you know, my main points, and then the final payoff at the end. So that's the assignment for Sunday. Again, it's an outline. It is high level. It does not have to be exactly what you're going to end up doing. But for the most part, I want to see that you're making progress on your story. That is due Sunday by midnight. Next week, we're going to start doing the actual finalized research. When you have your data set, you're going to be able to explore your data set using filter and creating data tables. You're going to start creating your visuals next week. Okay, that was it. Hopefully that was nice and short for you. If you have any questions, please contact me. I'm available by Zoom. Thank you and have a great rest of the week.